Okay, hello everyone. We are live. Welcome back to Buckeye Politics. This is going to be a very epic live stream featuring some very intelligent, some very smart people, other political commentators, including American Populist and Great Lakes Politics, two good friends of mine. They know a lot about the topics we're going to be discussing. And if you could not tell by the title, we are going to be discussing the political future of the Rust Belt. Those are specifically Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, although we will focus on every single state in the Rust Belt. But the big focus is on the big three, two states that have very interesting political futures, and a region that is going to be very interesting to see how it votes in the future. Because if you look at demographics and trends and all the nuances of it all, they are states that could end up becoming Republican strongholds, but yet voted for Joe Biden in the 2020 election. So we're going to start with a brief history. Before we get into that, I want to introduce my guests. So would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, I'm Great Lakes Politics. I run like a channel. We occasionally do live streams over that's been dying out recently. I do have two channels because I had one channel with 1K, but then YouTube decided to cut off my subscriber count, so I couldn't gain any subs. So now I'm stuck with another channel that's got like 50 subs that I'm uploading most of my content on. So yeah, there's that. And I do content similar to Buckeye.
Well, in case you don't know, I'm an American Populist. I run a small YouTube channel where I do interviews with people on the dissonant side of the right. I also do videos of my own. I'm trying to make more of those videos. If you enjoy that type of thing, check out my channel. Lots of people recommend it, so hop on board if you haven't already.
Okay, Buckeye, you can, I guess, do
Yeah,
what
definitely. Go
do.
check those guys out because they make good content. So go check those guys out. The links will be in the description, pinned comment, wherever I feel like it. I always say I'll do it in the description, but
Yeah, you
I
should
put in
put
pinned
the
comment.
link to my channel with like 40 subs because
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start off with like a brief history of the politics of the Rust Belt. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to start with the 1960 election. And for those of you who do not know, it's kind of like the Great Lakes region of the United States. There's not like an official definition, but in my opinion, it includes the states of Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. You could make the
Basically
argument.
every state in my profile pic.
Yeah, you could make the argument for like West Virginia, Kentucky, maybe Missouri, New York, the Dakotas. You could make the argument, but in my opinion, I think it's like these states I'm kind of hovering with my mouse over right now that are the main Rust Belt states. And for those of you who do not know, the reason it's called the Rust Belt is because this is a major manufacturing. They did a lot of stuff with coal, steel, shipping. A lot of like blue collar working class types live in this area. And they're very unionized. So that's kind of why they call it the Rust Belt, because, a lot of stuff with steel manufacturing took place there. So if we go back to 1960, which I think is kind of a good model, back when the nation was not nearly as polarized, we had a very competitive election between Richard Nixon and JFK. You can see here, JFK did win the election, and the Rust Belt was pretty split.
That's
Nixon
debatable.
won.
That's debatable.
Well, yeah, we don't officially. If you don't count the shenanigans in Chicago and Missouri, then yeah. So if you look at the like Rust Belt, it was pretty split, as you can see here. It was very competitive. I mean, Pennsylvania and Michigan both went to JFK by very slim margins. Wisconsin went to Nixon by about 3-4. Ohio, Indiana, and Iowa went to Nixon by pretty sizable margins. Illinois was probably stolen from Nixon. Not gonna lie, we all know this. But Kennedy did win it, quote unquote.
It was very close either way, you could say.
Yeah, either way, it was very close. And then Minnesota went to Kennedy by about a point. So you can see here, the Rust Belt was very competitive. Every state was pretty much up for grabs. We had in 1964, pretty much every single state here voted for Johnson by like 30 points or something crazy because people didn't like Barry Goldwater. And Johnson ran a decent campaign, but Barry Goldwater was just not a good nominee. So we don't really if you count that out, we go to 1968, where you can see here once again very similar. All the states were pretty competitive. However, as you can see, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Minnesota were all solidly Democratic. Ohio, Illinois, and Wisconsin were all narrowly went Republican. Iowa and Indiana narrowly went Republican by more sizable margins. And it's like I said, there really wasn't as much, I guess, like political divide as you could say there was now. But another reason that it kind of wasn't showing as much is George Wallace, who was actually who ran as like a segregationist, kind of I don't really want to say right wing populist, but he kind of was on economics. Long story short, George Wallace, he was from the South and he ran on segregation, but he had a lot of appeal to blue collar voters, and a lot of blue collar voters in places like Mahoning County, Ohio, I know there's actually a sizable portion of the vote that went to George Wallace, and a couple other working class counties that you probably know from more
I
recent
think even
politics.
Wallace got like almost 10% in Cook County.
Yeah, George Wallace did very well in the North with like union voters, steel workers, because he was pro-union but also socially conservative. And a lot of those voters just, they were Democrats, but they didn't like how, I guess, liberal Hubert Humphrey was, but also weren't fans of Nixon. So as you can see here, even though Nixon did win this race by a sizable margin, the states, and you could maybe make the argument that George Wallace actually hurt the Democrats in places like Ohio, where it was Nixon only won by 2 points, but Wallace took 11% of the vote. A lot of those voters are from, like I said, the Mahoning County, Appalachia, which probably would have gone to Hubert Humphrey. So you could maybe even make the argument that these states were even more, I guess, Democratic leaning, more unionized, but they seem more Republican because of George Wallace being on the ballot. Like Ohio, it was only went to Nixon by 2, but Wallace got 11% of the vote. And a lot of those people were Democrats who were union voters, more conservative Democrats. Illinois, same thing. Like AFM said, Cook County Wallace got like 10% of the vote. Nixon only won the state by 3. So, this area, although it seems we're very Republican now, if you take the George Wallace votes into account, a couple of these states probably flipped Democratic. We had a 1972 where Nixon had a huge landslide, but as you can see here, Nixon did pretty poorly in the Rust Belt, all things considered. He only won Michigan by 14, Wisconsin by 9, and Minnesota by 5, Pennsylvania by 20, Ohio by 21, Indiana, and he won by a landslide. Iowa, he only won by 17. Nixon won by 18. Well, if you look at other states, he won by like 20, 56, 28, 27, 24, 26, 31. Nixon did considering the rest of the country and take the rest of the nation into account, Nixon actually did relatively poorly in the Rust Belt, especially like the upper part of the Rust Belt, like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. We had a 1976. This is where it gets interesting. Jimmy Carter came along. As you can see here, Jimmy Carter won pretty much the entire Rust Belt except for Illinois, Iowa, and Michigan. Although Gerald Ford was from Michigan, I do believe.
Yeah, that definitely had enough. If the candidate wasn't from Michigan, it would have been either very close or probably a Democratic win.
Yeah, so Michigan did go to Gerald Ford by like 5 points, but keep in mind Ford was from Michigan. He had a decent amount of appeal there, and so that's kind of why
point out he got like 60% of the vote in Grand Rapids, which actually voted for Biden.
Yeah, so like I said, yeah, sure. Other than Michigan, which is kind of an outlier, the Rust Belt did narrow up quite a bit. Illinois and Iowa only went to Ford by like a point. Indiana has always been kind of an outlier. Indiana's always been a lot more Republican leaning than the rest of the Rust Belt, but it did only go to Ford by 7. And then Michigan, obviously, because Ford was from there, went to him by 5. And then Wisconsin, Pennsylvania went to Carter by like 2, and Minnesota went to Carter by 12, and Ohio was kind of like a swing state. So, and then we had a 1980, which is the Reagan landslide. You can see here Reagan, other than the South, he did pretty poorly in the Rust Belt. He didn't do awful, but he probably should have done much better considering how the economy was. And even then, he did decently. He won Michigan by 6, Ohio by 10, Pennsylvania by 7. And this was mostly because of the Reagan Democrats, who we saw a few years ago that supported George Wallace. And the Reagan Democrats are pretty similar to the, I guess you could say, Obama-Trump voters we have today. They're blue-collar, working-class voters who supported Reagan because the economy was bad, and they didn't like how left the Democrats had gone on some social issues. So they turned out heavily for Reagan. But even then, like the Reagan Democrats were a huge part of Reagan's coalition, and he still only won these states by lean to likely margins. He honestly, he could have done a lot better, and that was because, like I said, a lot of blue-collar voters still voted Democrat. We had a 1984.
Also, he marketed himself as he was from California, even though he was born in Illinois, so that's kind of why he did better in the West than he did in the Midwest. True too.
There's a lot of other
campaign more on like being born in small town Illinois. He probably would have done better in the.
Yeah, well, the Reagan campaign was more focused, I guess, like on the economy. They weren't like necessarily trying for specific states. I'm sure if he could have done better in the Rust Belt had he really tried. We had a 1984, which like a lot of people say 1984 was like the biggest landslide, and it kind of was. And like Republicans talk about like when the Republicans reminisce about winning elections, they always mention 1984. And as you can see here, in 1984, objectively, Reagan did very poorly in the Rust Belt. He only won Pennsylvania by 7, Wisconsin by 9, Illinois by 12, Iowa by 7, and he lost Minnesota, although it was very competitive, and that was Mondale's home state. And the big reason for this is there was kind of like the farm. I'm drawing a blank on the name, like the farm subsidies. That's why Wisconsin and Iowa are pretty competitive because Reagan was kind of opposed to, I guess, government intervention when there was like the whole farm crisis, and that's why a lot of that's another reason is this area has used to be like relatively pro like Republican, but since the GOP has gone more, I guess you could say, libertarian on economics, corporatist, and they've kind of been like more hands off with the economy. That's actually hurt a lot of farmers in Wisconsin, Iowa, the Driftless area, and so that's another
Also,
reason.
I will point out Iowa actually moved to the left from 1980 to 1984. If you want to show the
Yeah, we can.
swing.
Yeah, Iowa voted for Reagan by 12 and 80 and 80, and then 84 had only voted for him by 7. So like I said, the farm crisis was a huge issue there. The fact that Republicans basically just said it's not the government's job to get involved when people were suffering and their farms were getting taken away. That is a big reason. And so, yeah, Reagan did great in Michigan. Like I said, Reagan Democrats helped him win Michigan. But outside of Michigan and Ohio, which are, he did very well there just because, he did decent. Reagan did well in Ohio because he won the suburbs. If you look at the map, he actually did relatively poorly in Appalachian and the blue collar parts. He's got
Wait, did
crazy
he win
margins.
Mahoning?
He did not win Mahoning, no.
Oh.
And then Indiana's always been a Republican stronghold. So yeah, compared to the rest of the country, the Rust Belt was way more Democratic. We had a 1988. This is where you see the big shift in terms of the farm policy and like the I suppose you could say the farm crisis having a play, and that is Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa voting heavily Democratic compared to the rest of the states. Like I said, Pennsylvania only voted for Bush by 2. But if you look at the map, it's really because Bush did well in the suburbs, and then Michigan and Ohio are both more or less swing states, although Bush did decently there as well. Illinois, Bush won by a narrow margin. Indiana was Bush plus 20. But yeah, so once again, compared to the rest of the country, the Rust Belt was definitely a more Democratic-leaning part of the state, or main part of the country. And then, like I said, that's mostly because of the farm crisis, giving Democrats big advantages in like the Driftless area, which is like Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, parts of Illinois, and then also Bush being very free trade hurt him in like a state like West Virginia and Pennsylvania, and it's probably why he didn't win Ohio by more. We go to 1992. This is the big election that really changed the Rust Belt. And so the Rust Belt, as you can see here, voted overwhelmingly for Bill Clinton. Wisconsin and Ohio were the closest states. I mean, obviously Indiana voted for Bush, but Indiana's weird because like they have a few places that are considered the Rust Belt, but most of Indiana is just like Republican farm country. So Indiana's kind of weird politically. Yeah, sure, it's in the Rust Belt, but it's kind of like that odd one out. So if you disregard Indiana, which culturally and like I guess economically speaking, it's not really all that like part of the Rust Belt.
Yeah,
but also,
Indiana is closer to a state like Tennessee, Kentucky.
Yeah, Indiana's more like it's in the Rust Belt because of like Gary, Indiana, and some of the industry that used to be there. But really, I guess culturally, it's more like Southern, I guess.
Also, a big reason it's always voted Republican was Fort Wayne and the Indianapolis suburbs.
Yeah, those are both overwhelmingly Republican leaning. So that is a big reason. So take out Indiana, as you can see, your Clinton did very well in the Rust Belt. And another thing I want to point out is the fact that Ross Perot also did very well in the Rust Belt. 20% of the vote in Ohio, 18% of the vote in Pennsylvania, 19% in Michigan, 21% in Wisconsin, 23% in Minnesota, 18% in Iowa, 16% in Illinois, although most of the Illinois vote was because of, I guess you could say probably most Illinois, the reason Ross Perot didn't do so well there was because Illinois, most of the Democratic votes there are from like black voters in the Chicago area, and Ross Perot didn't appeal to those people. So, but if you look at the more like, I guess, blue collar Democrats in Illinois, that's where Ross Perot did best. So, like I said, really other than Illinois, which Ross Perot still did pretty solidly in, he did very well across the Rust Belt. And Bush got pretty much shelled out because Bush on foreign policy and trade. This is the big thing. Trade is what really hurt Bush. And Ross Perot, who was very protectionist, he was very post-NAFTA. He did very well across the Rust Belt, especially compared to like the South. Like, look at this. North Carolina Perot only got 13% of the vote. Only got 8% of the vote in Mississippi, 10% in Alabama. He got 23% in Arizona. And then he did decently across the rest of the Midwest. But still, the Rust Belt, all things considered, he did best there. We go over 1996. Perot on the ballot again, 10%, 9%, 8%, 10%. Perot did very well in the Rust Belt still compared to other states like the South. He only got 5%, 6%. Come to Ohio, we got 10%. And like he did get Montana, and he did decently across the Midwest, the Great Plains as well, because he had some appeal there too. People don't talk about this, but the Great Plains is also relatively protectionist, and other than really, I guess maybe Montana. That's besides the point. The point is Clinton absolutely destroyed Bob Dole in the Rust Belt, and Perot did very well there, did very well in the Rust Belt also, which suggests, maybe Clinton could have done even better or wasn't on the ballot, because a lot of these Perot voters were hardcore protectionists, blue collar types who, maybe thought Clinton was too socially liberal. So honestly, I'm surprised Clinton probably could have done better in the Rust Belt, and that is really because of trade. NAFTA was signed, and during these the late '90s, this is when NAFTA really began to take a pinch on these local communities across the Rust Belt, and so that is a big reason Democrats did so well there. Let's go to 2000. Other than Indiana, which has always been a Republican stronghold because of, like AFM mentioned, the suburbs of Fort Wayne and Indianapolis, which have always been solidly Republican, and Ohio, which is always a big swing state because Ohio is like a big mix of the working class Rust Belt types near the Northeast, Appalachia, which always tends to be a little bit more competitive, and then the suburbs and Indiana border, which are always more Republican. So Ohio, yeah, it's a Rust Belt state, but it's not. It's kind of like a mix, so it's a little bit more competitive. But if look at the rest of these states, you can see here, Gore did win Wisconsin and Iowa by very slim margins, mostly because of the farm crisis, and also Bush being socially conservative helped him there. But Al Gore had some.
I will point out about Wisconsin that Ralph Nader took a lot of the votes away from Al Gore, and in reality, he probably would have won the state by closer to 3, assuming Nader wasn't on the ballot.
Yeah, Bush did surprisingly well in Wisconsin and Iowa. That's because he, in 2000 at least, he was actually pretty non-intervention. If you watch the debates, he said he was opposed to nation building, and he kind of took more of a neutral stance on NAFTA. Well, he was also very socially conservative, and so Al Gore, who was Clinton's VP, and in Clinton the Democrats were slowly but surely becoming more socially liberal, and at the same time, NAFTA was signed by Clinton. And so a lot of these voters probably remember that. And so Bush probably could have won Wisconsin and possibly Iowa as well, because Nader got 2% of the vote there. So even though the Rust Belt, Michigan and Pennsylvania, voted for Gore by 4 and 5, if you add the Nader votes, and kind of add that in, then Gore probably could have. Bush was actually relatively competitive for that part in the Rust Belt, mostly because of, like I said, him being more moderate on interventionism, NAFTA, and being socially conservative. We had in 2004, and like I said, a very similar situation here. Although 2004 was just a cursed election, most of the reason Bush did decently was because of the suburban voters. Suburban voters turned out heavily for Bush, mostly because a lot of them kind of I don't want to say supported the war in Iraq, but social conservatives turned out heavily for Bush. That's why Bush did decently, because John Kerry was pretty socially liberal, especially for a place like the Rust Belt. And so, especially for Ohio, my home state of Ohio, a big reason Bush won Ohio and won the election was because there was a ballot initiative on gay marriage, which caused the rural areas and blue-collar working-class types to turn out heavily against that. The vote got destroyed, and so those people also voted for Bush, because Kerry, I don't believe John Kerry supported gay marriage, but he was a little bit more accepting of it than Bush was, obviously. And so a lot of those voters, social conservatives in the Rust Belt, there are a lot of ballot initiatives similar to that over the last year or so that had been, the Democrats and Republicans took sides on. And it was very obvious which side was more supportive of social liberalism and which side was more socially conservative. And so a lot of voters, did turn out against those initiatives. And the suburbanites as well, who also, saw the thing about Al-Qaeda threatening the U.S. and thought Bush would protect them. That's another reason that Bush did so well there. But even then, he did lose. He did lose Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So even with rural areas turning out heavily because of things on the ballot about gay marriage, and social conservatives and evangelical Christians turning out heavily, and Kerry being very liberal for the Rust Belt, Democrats still did very well in the Rust Belt. They still won those elections.
Also, I will point out John Kerry was not a very economically populist Democrat. He was basically identical. He was very pro-free trade. He really didn't offer any economic alternatives to Bush besides.
Yeah, that's another thing too, because
John Kerry, neoliberal.
John Kerry being a neoliberal, if he was more populist in economics, he probably would have done a lot better in the Rust Belt. But he was just not a good fit for the Rust Belt. And like I said, social conservatives were beginning to turn away from the Dems. And John Kerry, he was a neoliberal, like you guys said. There was on foreign policy and economics, there wasn't really a huge difference. So we go to 2008, which is kind of another big shift in terms of how the Rust Belt votes. As you can see here, it went very solidly for Obama. Even Indiana went for Obama in this cycle. Ohio went to Obama by 4. Pennsylvania went to Obama by 10. Wisconsin to Obama by 14. Iowa went to Obama by almost 10. Obama won Michigan by like 16 points and won Minnesota by 10. And so the Rust Belt took a huge shift to the left.
Ironically, Minnesota was the closest Rust Belt state besides Iowa, Indiana, and Ohio.
Yeah, that is interesting to note. Yeah. So Obama just did very well across the Rust Belt. Like, I mean, Obama did better in the South, sure, but really the Rust Belt was where he made huge improvements compared to 2004 for the Democrats.
Actually, McCain did better in the South.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That was because of Sarah Palin. If he didn't
Yeah.
have Sarah Palin, he would have done even worse.
And
Yeah.
I think the South was kind of turned off by his more progressive kind of rhetoric.
Well, yeah. But yeah, so Obama did very well in the Rust Belt, mostly because, I mean, it wasn't like, I guess it wasn't a huge part of his campaign, but a big thing Obama talked about was trade and taking on China and bringing back manufacturing jobs. It wasn't like a key note of his message, but that certainly played a part, and as well as the economy being so bad, that really helped Obama in the Rust Belt, winning these states very handily. And it's kind of, a lot of people said, oh, well, the Rust Belt's going to be solidly Democratic for years to come. We go to 2012, and that pretty much remained the case. I mean, sure, Romney flipped Indiana back, but that was pretty much expected. Indiana that was kind of a fluke. It wasn't stolen, but really it was just a state of bad economy and bad economy, bad candidate, and a good candidate made Indiana flip. That was really the only reason. But yeah, like I said, all these states are still likely for Obama. Indiana only went to Romney by 10. Romney should have won Indiana by more. Ohio only went to Obama by 3. But that wasn't a big shift. He only won it by about 4.5, and they only won it by 3. So really, in Ohio was still solidly in the Obama column, and all the rest of the Rust Belt was also solidly, also for Obama. And that is mostly because it narrowed up a little bit because Obama went more socially liberal. I'm from Ohio. I've talked to a lot of voters, and a lot of people didn't like the fact that Obama came out in support of gay marriage before the 2012 election. So a lot of those voters, so there are a decent amount of voters who maybe weren't as aligned with the Democratic Party that voted for Romney because they didn't like how left Obama had gone on social issues. But there still were a lot of voters, especially many former manufacturers, people affected by NAFTA, blue collar social conservatives across the Rust Belt who, sure, they didn't like Obama, but they didn't like Romney either. And so they voted for Obama because, they were more entrenched with the Democratic Party. And Obama had fixed the economy at least a little bit. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was better than 2008. And Obama at least talked about bringing jobs back. And another thing people don't talk about as well is Romney. He actually shipped. He was very pro free trade, and his company shipped a lot of jobs overseas. So that did not help him up there either. And so, honestly, considering the economy and how left Obama had gone on social issues, Republicans could have done a lot better in the Rust Belt than they did. And it's actually impressive how well Obama did because, all things considered, I mean, that Rust Belt could have gotten narrower if the Republicans nominated a good candidate, but they didn't, and Obama still had enough appeal to make it close. So now we head to 2016, which is the big election, kind of starts the realignment, which we'll begin discussing in a second here. So like I said, Trump did very well in Ohio and Iowa because he appealed to blue-collar voters, working class types, and also maxed out in places like Appalachia and the driftless part of Iowa. Rural, white, working class voters who have voted for Obama, lifelong Democrats who, they weren't maybe the biggest fans of some Democratic policies, but overall, the Democrats were still the party of union voters. They were still the party of social conservatism to an extent in the past. A lot of those, and the Democrats weren't as vocal about their social liberalism as they had been. And so, but Trump kind of changed all that. The fact that Trump talked about immigration, which is a huge issue in the Rust Belt. He talked about trade, which is another huge issue in the Rust Belt. And he also called out the Democrats for being so socially liberal. A lot of people don't talk about that, but Trump attacking the Democrats and Bernie and Hillary and making them Crooked Hillary and Crazy Bernie, names like that really helped him because that showed how left and how crazy the Democrats had gone on certain issues. So that's another thing people don't talk about. But yeah, Trump ran a message of optimism. He connected with a lot of voters, lifelong Democrats, and allowed him to do very well in Ohio and Iowa and flip Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and also make Minnesota pretty much the closest that it had been for a very long time. And so we head to 2020, and think about this for a second. So 2020, we had a global pandemic. Trump's approval rating was in the mid to low 40s. Biden was basically his entire campaign was focused around him being this moderate, Scranton go like generic Democrat who could appeal to the working man. That was basically his entire campaign, the Rust Belt. And he still basically made no gains in Iowa and Ohio. So Trump, we were in the middle of a pandemic. Biden was ran basically a perfect campaign for the Rust Belt. I mean, Trump's campaign focusing on like socialism and like communism and that stuff that didn't really have an effect on Rust Belt voters. So Rust Belt voters, the socialism message does not really work for the Rust Belt, and the label did not stick to Biden. And so in the middle of a pandemic, with Trump not really running a campaign focused on the Rust Belt, Trump's 2016 campaign was perfect for appealing to Rust Belt voters. His 2020 campaign, not so much. He talked about socialism. He called the Democrat, his attacks on Biden were not as good as they could have been. He had the first debate performance, which kind of hurt him a little bit. I mean, it was the arguments in the debate did not help at all with Rust Belt voters. I mean, sure, it may be a little bit, but all things considered, Trump's campaign in 2020 and Biden's campaign, and the national environment, Biden should have won the Rust Belt by a lot more. Biden could have done very well in the Rust Belt, and polls suggest that. A lot of polls had Biden winning Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin by like 8 to 10.
I believe the polling average for Wisconsin had as like D+7. He ended up barely winning it by half a point.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So all things considered, Biden's campaign Biden ran a pretty solid campaign for the Rust Belt. He talked about being from Scranton. He talked about, he portrayed himself as moderate, generic, pro-union Democrat. And Trump's campaign was focused on socialism and communism and, in the middle of a pandemic, and Trump's campaign, it didn't hit the right notes. Trump campaigned mostly calling Biden a socialist and while Biden's campaign appealed more to the Rust Belt type. So Trump's campaign was just not a good fit for the Rust Belt. Biden's campaign objectively was, and still Biden only won Pennsylvania by 1.2, Michigan by 2.8, Wisconsin by 0.6, and he basically made no gains in Iowa and Ohio. So this tells me that if Republicans actually get their act together, we can easily win Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and possibly Minnesota, Illinois, New York as well in the future. So that was kind of like the brief history. Well, that was a long history actually of how the Rust Belt has voted, kind of why it voted. You got to you now have a better idea of the history of the Rust Belt in terms of how it voted and the type of voters that live there. So, do we want to go on to our next topic about the realignment and how it's going to affect the Rust Belt in the future?
Okay, so so basically the Rust Belt I see in the future becoming more Republican, especially. Now, I guess I can. Should I just show this map right away?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so basically, I had made this map a few months ago. Actually, I think it was, I don't know how long ago I made it, but it was for a hypothetical election, potentially in maybe 20 to 30 years, maybe a bit longer than that. Basically, and I basically put together how I think all the counties would vote in all the states. Not too much, but what state should we start in the Rust Belt? Should we get some of the ones already out, like Iowa?
Yeah, I'll start with Iowa.
Yeah, so Iowa I have not really going too much Republican. Sure, Republicans gain a bit in the northeastern part of the state, but that's about the only place. Pretty much everywhere else in Iowa is maxed out. I have them winning it by about 17 points here. Democrats do manage to do a little bit better in the Des Moines suburbs. I think Dallas County will flip in the coming decades, but Republicans do better. They flip Davenport and Scott, do better in Dubuque, and do better in the northeastern part of the state. Now, I guess next we can go over to the state of Ohio, Buckeyes' home state. So do you see anything? How does this map generally look? Do you have any
it's a solid map, honestly. I agree with everything on there. I mean, Delaware County might go Democratic. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Delaware again?
The one above Columbus, the suburban one.
Oh, yeah. I haven't.
It's been trending Democrat, and it has a huge population recently. The last.
Is it Hamilton County? The one above Cincinnati also trending.
Yeah,
Democrat?
I have it moving Democrat. It moves a bit more Democrat.
Yeah.
Also, Dayton, I have.
Dayton will still stay relatively competitive, but I think it will move a little Democrat because it is.
Yeah, so it goes blue by
much a
about
huge suburb.
7 points. However,
Yeah.
Republicans definitely do better in the northeastern part of the state. Even Cuyahoga narrows up a bit.
Yeah.
Like Biden gets 67 there in 2020. According to this, he only gets about 60, which, because there's no third parties in this map, that would mean it would be in the 50s, the high 50s. So Biden probably would, or Democrats would probably be getting like 58, 59% in Cuyahoga. I also
Yeah.
have Republicans flipping the county Akron's in, Summit.
Yeah, Summit
They
County
improve
Summit
in
County
Lorain.
definitely could flip. It'd be a hard county to flip, but I can see it happening,
Republicans will be winning Mahoning by roughly 16.
if not
Also,
more.
I have Medina moving a few points to the right, but that's Buckeye's old home county. I believe he lives in Akron now, or the Akron.
Yeah,
Summit.
so I'll talk about that for a quick second. So yeah, Summit County, it's hard to flip, but I can see it flipping. Trump narrowed it up a lot, and there are a lot of blue collar voters, especially in the southern part of the county, like near Barberton and southern Akron. There are a lot of blue collar voters there that still vote Democrat. It's a very unionized area. But then again, the northern part of the county, like Cuyahoga Falls, Hudson area, that's very like suburban, very upper class. So like
However,
college educated
the
whites,
Medina
so-
County is also a suburban county, but it's been actually moving Republican in recent years.
Yeah, that's true. Because Medina, there's a lot of suburbanites like moving in there. It's becoming more of a suburban county, but the rural areas and the like working class parts, like Lodi and Wadsworth, those areas have gotten much more Republican because they're.
What
they're more
website am I
working
using? I'm using the election shuffler from electionsdaily.com. Just look up the election shuffler and this will pop up.
Yeah. The only other thing I would say is Lucas County that it'll probably flip. I'm not really sure though. I haven't.
Well, isn't it
It's
declining in
gotten.
population?
What was that?
Isn't it declining in population?
Yeah, it's declining in population.
Yeah, I think that's gonna
and
help.
it's pretty working class. It's very working class. It's where Toledo is. So I think it could probably flip in the future.
I also expect Republicans to start doing quite a bit better in some of these counties in
Yeah.
between Cleveland and Toledo.
Yeah, like the
Especially
Lake Erie
like
Shores and
Sandusky.
Isles. That's like a big tourist destination, but the people who live there, like when you go there, it seems like like all these rich people with like boats and stuff, but actually that's actually pretty working class area. So I do think it'll continue to get more Republican.
Yeah, so what state should we go to next? I think Indiana, because I barely have anything changing there.
Yeah, Indiana's
what
not
is
going
it?
to change a whole lot.
I have it as R plus. In 2020, it was R plus 16. Here it's R plus 18. So one of the downsides for Republicans is they do lose ground in the Indianapolis suburbs. Now, this county, Hamilton County, voted for Trump by 6.9. And this, I actually have it basically flopping on its head. That's voting Democrat by 6. I believe I also have Democrats gaining in Marion by a sizable amount. They get like over 70% of the vote there. I'm not sure how accurate that is. Maybe it stays a little bit more competitive, but I do have it shifting more Democrat. I also have actually, no, I didn't narrow this up, but I probably should narrow that up a bit. Allen County, home of Fort Wayne. However, Republicans, one of the areas they do very well in is the eastern end of Chicago. These counties are probably some of the most untalked about, like very right-wing trends in the Rust Belt. The East Chicago suburbs. I think Red Eagle talks about them a bit, and I think that congressional district up here is probably going to be flipping in a few cycles, if not this cycle, but I'm not sure. And I also have Republicans doing a little bit better down here near the Kentucky border. So what state should we do next?
Let's do Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. That's
I was
what
just in Pennsylvania, so I give some analysis of this.
Okay. Do you like live in Pennsylvania or something?
No, I was just there though, so.
Okay. So I generally have Republicans gaining in northeastern PA. I think Democrats do gain a bit in the suburbs. Yeah, I do have them gaining by a few points. Philadelphia, though, I do have it narrowing up a bit. It actually made a significant shift to the right in 2020, Philadelphia. Because there is, believe it or not, in like the northern part of Philadelphia, there is a large white working class population that is trending Republican heavily. And Bucks County, what's actually weird about Bucks County is the more Republican part of the county is actually in the south part, closer to Philadelphia, and the more Democratic part is up here. But Bucks is a more white working class suburban county, and I see it going more Republican. Same with up here, a lot of northeastern Pennsylvania, especially the Scranton area. I have moving more Republican, especially Luzerne. I'm not sure if this is realistic, the amount I swung it right, but keep in mind this is supposed to be like 20 to 30 years in the future, so Luzerne is going red by a substantial amount. Center County could really go either way. There's not that many people there. It's a college town, but I'm not sure how many people are going to move there. If it's even going to remain a college town, you never know. Allegheny, this may I just decided to swing the entire area a bit right. This might be a little too close. What would be an ideal margin for Allegheny?
What was it in 2020?
D plus 20. I don't know why I had it this close. I don't
Maybe
remember.
like D plus 8, D plus 10.
Yeah, something like
Or
that.
like D plus 8.
I think if Republicans put a lot of work in Pittsburgh, they can win Allegheny County in the future. Like it should be a red county, honestly. They've just put in the work.
Well, that's where
I
Pittsburgh
think Pittsburgh's
is,
just too Democrat.
yeah,
though.
Pittsburgh.
No, I'm talking
Yeah.
about like the suburbs outside immediately. They could do a lot better in Allegheny County.
That's
I have
true.
Republicans gaining big in these counties surrounding it. However, Erie County does go Republican by like 15, which I could see happening. Now we can go to a state that's kind of the Rust Belt, kind of not the Rust Belt, a state to the north of it, New York, which I have getting significantly more narrow. It was D plus 20 in 2020, and I have it as D plus 9 here. I just think New York has been one of the more Republican shifting states in the country. Do I think it's ever going to flip? Well, throughout New York's history, even going back to like the Civil War era, like even past then, New York has always been a Democratic leaning state. There's never really been a time in history it's been a red state. It's been a swing state before, but never really a red state. And I really don't see it becoming a red state in the future. I think it will be maybe a bit narrower, but New York City is just way too big for that to happen. I do have it getting a little bit narrower, but there's not that much room to grow. Yes, there is some room to grow in Brooklyn. I could see that getting a lot closer in the future, but as of now, it's just too early to tell. But Republicans do definitely flip Buffalo, also Rochester, do a bit better in Syracuse, also do a substantial amount better in Albany, and also do a little bit better in some of these northern suburban counties and Long Island. People forget that Long Island, compared to Mitt Romney, Trump did very well on Long Island, but that may have to do with the home state effect, but I'm not too sure. What state should I do next, Buckeye?
Let's do
Do
Michigan
Illinois.
or Illinois, whatever.
Okay,
works.
Illinois is probably the most controversial one on this list because I actually have it narrowly flipping Republican. Keep in mind, this is going to be like a few decades in the future. Now, we can go down the rural areas I have basically maxing out for Republicans, which they are close to being already, but the rural areas don't really move that Republican. Like, if you look at the swing map, wait, what the heck happened in this county? I don't know why it swung that red, but a lot of these rural counties I don't have moving that Republican. I have St. Clair, which is East St. Louis. Biden won it by 9. I have it flipping Republican by 2 points. I think that's reasonable. This county, Biden won by 1. I have it you could probably flip by more. This is more like white working class county. Also, the county Cairo's in moves from R plus 14 to R plus 25. I think that's reasonable too. For the future. Republicans also managed to do a bit better in some of these smaller metro areas, such as Decatur. They end up, that might be a little bit too much of a swing. I think they'll do about like 6 points better there. They do a bit better. I think 8 points better in Springfield's a reasonable amount. They also flip back McLean, which is home to, what city is there? I think it's
Bloomington.
No, I thought Bloomington's in a No, is it in?
No, it's in McLean County.
Oh, what's in Champlain? Is that Urbana?
I think that's Decatur.
No, Decatur's in Macon County. Decatur's a Republican city. It's in Macon County.
I forgot the other city.
I believe it's Urbana and Champaign. But I also have Republicans gaining in Peoria. They won that by about 10. Also, Rock Island, part of the Tri-Cities area. I have that also flipping Republican. They also do better in Rockford. I just think that this city is more of a white working class one. Republicans will do better now. People will be wondering about the suburbs. And a lot of these suburbs do have a large Catholic population, which is one of the more less talked about trends in recent American history. They are trending heavy red, the Catholic vote, or at least not really heavy red, but they have been shifting red. So if you have been paying attention to American politics, there's always a stereotype that Protestants usually vote Republican and Democrats vote Catholic, but that is slowly going away as more Christians in general, as the secular population increases in America, more Christians are flocking to the Republican Party of all denominations, and more of the secular people are becoming Democrat. So I believe that not just that factor, but a lot of the people in these suburbs already vote Republican when it comes to down ballot races. Like, I believe every single Chicago suburban county besides Lake is controlled by Republicans at the local level. So I expect Republicans to be gaining there as well as Cook County. It has been losing population. As you can see, I even adjusted the turnout for decreased population. And it is narrowing too. There is a lot of red trending parts of Cook County. And I don't ever see Republicans winning Cook, but I can see it narrowing up. I have it narrowing up by roughly 10 points here over a 30-year period. I think that's reasonable. And Lake still goes Democrat. DuPage still goes Democrat by a narrow amount. And, okay, young centrist. Can we ban him from chat? Atheists for the win. Oh, God. Boston Zoomer, you can bully him if you want. We don't like him. So, whatever you want to. I blocked young centrist on Twitter because every time I tweet something out, it's like he's like a timer. Like, every time I tweet one thing out about voting, he's like, ranked choice voting would fix this. And it's like, okay, so yeah, that's my prediction for Illinois. I have it going on by 1.43. And yeah, that's about it. Should I do Wisconsin next?
Yeah, let's head north.
Okay, to the great state of Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin, if you may know, trends more Republican compared to any of this. But why is that? Why is Wisconsin shifting more Republican? Is that just because I'm biased because I'm from Wisconsin? Well, partly that. But the main reason is because most of these rural areas are only going red by, look at this, 15 points in 2020. Like, even the more red counties, this was the reddest county in Wisconsin. Trump only got 73% there. Now, most counties, this is like the average for a rural area, and that's like the most solid red county in Wisconsin. Now you look at some of these, they're going red by, 20 points? Yeah, there's plenty of room to grow here, as well as the driftless. Like, down here, this is the driftless counties. Like, Vernon County, Trump won it by 4 points. I think it's perfectly reasonable Republicans max out completely there. Crawford County Richland, he only wins by 9 points. Yeah, that's definitely going to go up. Same with Grant, only wins that by 12 points too. And also Madison, I do have getting a tad bit more Republican. I think if assuming Wisconsin becomes a more and more red state, which I see happening, a lot of that movement you're going to see of like people moving to Dane County, like the progressives, is going to stop happening. A lot of them are going to move out because if you're a progressive, why would you want to live in a red state? So a lot of them are going to move out of Dane, and I think it'll narrow up a bit. And I think Republicans will do better in these surrounding counties compared to Madison. This county is just so cursed. I don't see Republicans ever flipping it. It will narrow a bit, but it's just cursed. Milwaukee, I have narrowing a bit. It goes like another 10 points to the right, I think. Is that how I have it? I think I have it going like 10 points. Yeah, it goes from 70% to 60%. So, yeah, I think that's reasonable. Republicans also gained Racine Kenosha. WOW counties moved back Republican. But, like, here's the thing. The reason the WOW moved Democrat in 2020 is not an actual trend. It's just because they were pissed off at Trump. And all these people hate Biden like crazy. The WOW counties are never going Democrat. Are never going to really shift Democrat again. And yeah, what should we do next? How many states do we have left standing in the Rust Belt? I think just Minnesota.
Just Michigan and Minnesota.
Should we do Minnesota first?
Yeah.
Now, Minnesota, this is an interesting one because I actually have quite a few counties flipping Democrats, such as Anoka, but Republicans do slightly better in Hennepin County, and I think in Ramsey County as well. I think that the urban trends might happen a little bit. Now, if you didn't know, in American politics, in recent years, it's generally like a consensus that, the suburbs are shifting left but the rural and urban areas are shifting right, which technically is happening, but it's not like any of them are really going to flip. Like, no, there's not going to be any urban centers flipping Republican anytime soon, besides maybe Miami, which we could see in another video. I did do the entire country in this. It's not just the Rust Belt. I did have it for Florida as well. Maybe in another video, I'll talk about the Sun Belt. And so I have Republicans doing a bit better in Minneapolis, but losing ground in the suburbs. But Republicans do definitely do better in the southeastern part of Minnesota. They flip Winona by a sizable amount too. They get better margins in Houston. They also do better in the northeastern part of the state.
The Iron Range.
Yes. And they actually
That
flip
place
the
is so
county
cursed
Duluth.
politically.
What?
The Iron Range is so cursed politically.
Yeah.
It should be a Republican stronghold, but it's just not because it's so unionized.
We're probably never going to flip this county.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's
No,
it
it's
for
because
Minnesota.
probably
Now on to the great state of Michigan. Now, just why does Michigan exist? I have no idea. I think that's something Buckeye and I can agree on because he's from Ohio, and I assume he doesn't like Michigan that much.
No, you can take the UP, and we'll have the lower half.
Why would you have the lower half? Then Ohio would be a blue state.
We can
Actually,
just make
what-
Detroit. We can give Detroit to Canada, and then take the rest of it.
And Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Listen, I'd honestly rather have Detroit than Ann Arbor. Even though there's tons of crime in Detroit, Ann Arbor is just a bunch of rich suburbanites. So
Yeah, we'll give Canada, Detroit, and Ann Arbor, and we'll take the rest.
actually, no, just gerrymander Ann Arbor in. I don't want to give them Detroit. Imagine what you imagine how deadly Detroit would become if they took away all the guns in Detroit, because this is what would happen then. The people who have the guns would be the criminals, and all the
Wow.
people using guns to defend their stores would have them taken away.
Well, that
So
sucks.
Detroit would become even worse. So just like gerrymander, do that thing they did in Illinois, for that. I don't know. Okay, but Democrats gain in Oakland. They lose a little bit in Ann Arbor, lose a sizable amount in Detroit, lose a bit in Lansing. Republicans actually flip Flint by a very narrow margin. Also do better in Saginaw, better in Bay. Why does this county even so narrow in the first place? I have no idea. Have to ask Gentept about that one. Democrats actually flip Traverse City, ironically enough. Republicans do better in Muskegon, but Democrats do better in Grand Rapids, also in Kalamazoo. And yeah, that's about it for Michigan. So I think we're done with this map now, Buckeye. So if there's anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah, no, I think we pretty much summed everything up.
Should we
We'll talk about
Should we just read chats for a bit?
Yeah, let's just read chats. Anyone have any questions about, I don't know, the Rust Belt, politics in general, literally anything? If we don't
Do
get
people
anything,
want me to show them more on that map, relating to the Sun Belts in the Northeast even? What do I have Miami-Dade going in this? I just want to see. Oh, I have Miami-Dade as in 20 to 30 years, assuming trends continue. I have it as R+9, Miami-Dade.
Well, the
Yeah,
city of Miami itself is surprisingly Republican. I lived in Florida, so I know Florida politics very well.
I could potentially in the future see Monroe County voting to the left of Miami-Dade because Key West is just so degenerate.
Well, Monroe is mostly the Everglades, but the population center is the Keys, so that kind of determines where Monroe is going to be politically.
Yeah.
And that's only
even then
where,
parts of Monroe did shift Republican. Like parts of Key West did.
Just like
well,
the
the entire state
Hispanic
of Florida did.
Key West is cursed. Half of its base Hispanics, the other half is just degeneracy.
Well, Miami is a
Probably
history
not
being
AP.
Didn't he get
We're
kicked
gonna
off
see
the
the
ballots?
DeWine slide.
Yeah, the DeWine slide. I called it. It was going to happen.
Yes, we do have a Discord.
Yeah, it's
By the way,
dead,
who's
though.
hyped that Blake won in Arizona? Who's
And it's
hyped for that?
Buckeye's Discord has been taken over by corrupt neocons.
I mean,
Who will
not
literally
really.
ban you if you say we shouldn't shill for Ukraine.
So did Carrie Lake win in Arizona? Did they call
Yeah,
the results
Yeah,
yet?
she did.
Karen
Okay, that's
Robson conceded.
Carrie Lake's been winning since like the election night or like the morning the next day. She took the lead.
It was
then they
just
didn't
like
actually
Dr.
call it.
Oz. I called that it was going to be just like Dr. Oz. Actually, no,
Yep.
I was dooming that night, wasn't I? Whatever.
You
Carrie
doom
Lake
all
is
the
gonna be
time.
such a great senator. I can't wait for him to get in there in Arizona.
I don't doom as bad as Red Lion, though.
Yeah, Red Lion is like I don't even know. Man's just
Well, he lives in the UP, so I mean,
yeah.
he has to deal with the most harshest winter on Earth. You know what I mean? That
And
probably
he has
plays
to
a
deal
role.
with. He has
he
to
also
deal with
leaked
the
his
governor
address.
who's somehow worse than mine.
Buckeye, will the Northeast Ohio continue to shift to the right? Yeah. Pretty much all of Northeast Ohio will shift to the right. It's
Oh, should I
just
talk about the Wisconsin governor race?
yeah, some places will shift more than others though. Like I don't know. Like
Wasn't this
Mahoning,
stream?
Lorraine, Mahoning, Lorraine, and Trumbull County, and probably Ashtabula. They will shift heavily to the right, while Geauga, Lake, and probably Portage, the more like I guess you could say suburban, especially Geauga, they'll shift a little bit to the right, but they're pretty much maxed out. All right,
Can
go
you
ahead,
talk
AFM.
about Brazilian politics, please? No, this is what Biden needs to do. I will super approve of Biden if he does this. He needs to orchestrate a military coup to ensure Bolsonaro serves until he dies. Then I would become a huge supporter of Brandon. Is Erie County, PA going for no? Erie County, Pennsylvania is going to go like safety. It's a suburb. It's moving left.
It barely went Biden. Like
It's
1%,
shifting blue. Cope.
barely.
It's D plus 70 now. I'm Midwest politics. Once a county goes blue, it will never go red again.
You know,
Midwest
AP Erie is
politics
going to get
on
more
the-
Republican. Not like super Republican, but a little bit. If you look at
Okay,
the
can you get
suburbs,
Midwest politics on the stream?
I would rather not do that. AP, the only reason Erie went blue is because the suburbs shifted heavily to the left, and I think they're going to shift back. And even the rural areas of Erie aren't as Republican as they probably could be. So I think Erie will get. It won't be like solid Republican, but it'll be like R+5, R+10.
Grand Rapids, did you see that Republicans in Michigan got like 60% of the primary total vote?
Yeah, that's interesting to see.
I think I heard somewhere it's like the definition of like regretful Biden voters in Grand Rapids.
Well, wasn't that the last place the Trump campaign in 2020 was Grand Rapids, Michigan?
Yeah,
thought
I
he
It was
was
believe
somewhere
so.
in
in
Michigan,
Kenosha.
right?
I thought he was in Kenosha.
No, it was in Michigan. I remember.
On
that.
election day, he was in Traverse City. I know that.
Oh,
That was the last state, so kind of thought he was down in Michigan. And
he was in
remembered
Kenosha like the day before though. God damn, I can't wait for Tony Evers to lose. But well, let me go ahead and say the best candidate to do it is not that Rebecca Clayfish. Like everyone on Twitter is like acting like she's the greatest candidate ever, and she's a true conservative. But if you look at it, she's like, oh, she regretted saying that she opposed gay marriage in 2010. She said, "I'm so sorry that I said something so bad. People have the right to do whatever they want in their own home." But Michaels comes out, Tim Michaels, the other Republican, and he's like, "Marriage is between a man and a woman, and that's what I'm gonna believe as governor." I mean, it's based.
We need to do another stream to really go in depth with the Wisconsin
Yes.
governor race before the primaries next week.
We should do it Monday, the day before.
Yeah, okay, we can do that. I am firmly in the Michaels camp. I originally supported Clayfish, but now I'm firmly.
I regret
Michaels.
supporting Clayfish.
Yeah,
Like,
so
all
do
these-
I now. Who are your parents
Real
voting
American
for?
made a good video about it too.
Yeah, FM. Who are your parents voting for?
I don't know, but I don't even know who they're voting for.
Maybe you should like ask
No, I don't ask.
why.
Because they vote like in Democrat primaries half the time. I don't know.
Well, your
Dude,
parents
my
are
parents
Democrats.
aren't like my parents aren't like registered Republicans like yours. They like vote all over the place. Buckeye.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. My dad literally voted for Bernie Sanders in 2020.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
But now he supposedly likes Trump again, so I don't know.
That's kind of cursed. Will Michigan governor go red, Buckeye? Yeah, I think Tudor Dixon will win by like half a point. It'll be close.
No. Disagree. I'm doing. You know what? We need some like filler content. I'm gonna do a governor map. Okay.
Will John Gibbs win Michigan's third, Buckeye? Yeah, he'll win.
Yeah, I think he'll narrowly win.
Yeah, he's not. Grand Rapids is mostly just
Uh,
anti-Trump.
Because
not,
let's just say a video just came out of Tudor Dixon that was degenerate. Let's just say.
Hey, from that video's been out like for months. The Democrats have already made attack ads on her about that, and so did Republicans in the primary.
Yeah, she's gonna lose.
No, this has been happening for like months, and it hasn't had an effect.
It's going to now because Democrats are gonna go insane with it.
They've been doing this for like months. AFM.
Yeah, and
They released an ad with her.
And
They
Tudor
released an ad.
Dixon's already 10 points behind in the polls, so it's working. It's working.
She's
John
actually
Gibbs was behind in the polls, so you never
Yeah.
know what could
and
happen.
she's actually been gaining.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, we will give this governor position. This is exactly what's going to happen. Okay, so safe D, not Nevada. Steve Sisolak's going to die. But
So
I think Massachusetts will be safe. Keep in mind,
AFM, why do you dislike Scott Walker?
Because Scott Walker pissed off all the unions and literally he literally almost flipped Wisconsin back to a blue state. Like, seriously, I'm surprised he didn't lose by more. The only reason he slightly won was because Evers just sucked at it as a candidate. But Walker basically pissed off everyone. And if Kleefisch gets in there and does all the stuff with the unions again, Wisconsin's trends may be put in jeopardy. That's all I'm saying. Which is why Michaels needs to win that primary. Everyone knows Tudor Dixon was in a crappy horror. That's what that was. I thought I didn't watch the video.
It was a horror movie in like
Oh,
2009.
I didn't watch the video because it looked like it was degenerate and I didn't want to watch it.
It wasn't even
assumed
like
it was
that bad.
something
She was just in like a skimpy outfit and then she killed a guy. Like, I'm not sure.
Oh,
There's way worse things. It's not like
I thought it was something degenerate. I didn't watch the video because I didn't want to see like like do you blame me for not watching the video? Like, I don't want to watch degenerate shit. Okay, what's next? Any other safe blue
Maryland.
No, she
think I'm
wore
gonna-
like
she
Can
what?
you make members? Eventually, yeah.
Buckeye memberships. AP is going to be the only
To
one.
do that.
I won't be able to afford it. Okay,
I might do a
and then-
Patreon. I don't know. We'll see. If there's if it's literally just gonna be you, AP, then I won't do it. But if I get like other people asking, then I might.
It's just gonna say. You're just gonna see members, and it's just gonna say AP. Real American is just stupid with his memberships. He's like, become a member and you'll have a good feeling in your heart. It's like, what? That's it.
I love rap. He's such
Big
a
Penguin
interesting guy.
polling. No, but Big Penguin polling is the like top member. They donate like hundreds of dollars to rap. Where does Big Penguin get this money from? They donate him like hundreds of dollars every stream. Like, where did they get this? It's like Bill Gates funding Big Penguin polling is like a disinformation thing. They claim that they have information that Trump's going to hold a mega rally in January 2023.
Laugh whenever he says that.
Okay, this is it. Then any other likely D states?
Oregon, Colorado.
No. Oh yeah, Colorado. Rhode Island. Illinois, maybe. Could be lean though. Could be lean. I'm never giving up on Darren Bailey. He better pull up the New Jersey. Pay me $50 a month. You may go homeless, but at least you're supporting real American politics and you're helping fight radical socialism. Okay, Oregon, I'm gonna put in the lean D column. I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing like. I'm just going through. Wisconsin likely. I don't care what people say. Actually, Ohio's safe because Peterson's off the ballot. And yeah, that's it. That's the governor map. This is what it's going to look like for sure, 100%.
Now, Florida will be
I
more
hope-
Republican than Georgia, honestly, at this rate.
No,
Other than
Florida, I
Michigan.
use 15-point margins. DeSantis isn't winning by over 15. Both Kemp and DeSantis will win by over 5, but less than 15, so they're both likely. What's wrong with this map? I don't see anything wrong with it.
Michigan, and
I disagree with Minnesota. Minnesota's way too cucks.
No, you have to realize the legal weed party is polling at like 9%, and there's no other third parties on the ballot.
Yeah, but Tim is
think-
popular in Minneapolis, and that's all that really matters.
No, but I think it's going to take away votes from the Democrats, the legal weed. You seriously think they're going to be taking any votes from the Republicans?
I mean
No.
maybe. Have you seen the Minnesota?
No, Scott Jensen's actually running a good campaign. If Scott Jensen was like running a shit campaign, it'd be one thing, but he's actually doing good. Oregon's correct. Oregon will be lean. No, Michigan's not lean D.
I think
I
Oregon
it's
could
gonna
be.
lean.
Oregon could go Republican.
There. Fixed
Likely
Michigan.
D. Oregon might actually go Republican. Actually, I used to think Oregon would probably flip, but now I don't think it is because I watched the debate between like the three candidates, and Betsy Johnson's actually like kind of seeming more socially more seeming. She's making herself to seem more conservative. I think she's scared she's going to cost the Democrats the election. It's really sad. I have it lean D now.
Oregon.
Yeah.
You know
No,
what?
because Betsy Johnson, she's like she was originally running as like a progressive, like like even further left than the Democrat. But then in the debate, she was like talking about supporting like I don't know, like logging and not doing stuff with the environment and like crime and stuff. So like being more tough on crime. So I think that Democrats are probably going to win actually. All right, since we're bored, since we're not talking about anything, we're going to end the stream here.
No.
Thank you guys for watching. I hope you
we
enjoyed.
must continue
And if
this
you
map.
did, please like and subscribe for
No,
more.
no,
Thank
no,
you guys
no.
for all
You
coming
must
on.
not